Welcome to the Bad Roman Podcast. On this show, we talk with veterans, community leaders, Christians and non-Christians as we explore the entanglement of Christians with the state. The Bad Roman Project was created out of the firm belief that as Christians, we are called to follow Christ, not the state. Here is your host, Craig Hargis.
Hey folks, when we discuss the philosophy of anarchy, are we moving towards anarchy, or are we pumping the brakes, or even worse, going in reverse? Are we able to explain it in a way that gets people interested, or does the discussion become complicated to the point that the conversation becomes circular? Today, my friend and fellow podcaster Michael Storm joins me to talk about this and his podcast, Toward Anarchy.
Would rather serve God than serve Caesar, you feel me? Right. I'm just trying to live what he said. I'm just trying to live what he said. I ain't scared, I will take one to the head. Go ahead. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad.
Michael Storm, how you doing, my friend?
Craig, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so good to talk to you again, man. It's been a while, and I've been looking forward to catching up with you. This is really cool, man.
Yeah, so you've had me on your show a couple of times, and I've enjoyed those conversations so much. Like, there's something about you and I, just the conversation. Like, we can cut up on your show. The way your show is set up, it sounds like a radio, program, and so we can go off air. We can cut up a little bit off air and just make jokes about. You're a Pink Floyd fan. I'm like, I don't really like Pink Floyd, and we can talk about it, and then we can go back onto the show, and you bring it up, and it's just kind of cool. So, what I like to do with folks when I get them on the show, first of all, who is Michael Storm? Tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you're comfortable telling us about yourself.
I guess nobody ever really asks about me. I'm just a normal guy, man. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, on the streets, single parent, started my own family at a young age. I mean, I've had a lot of different experiences, man. I've been to other countries. I've been all over the nation and seen different people and talked to different people for different reasons. I remember I traveled once in 1986 to the World's Fair in Vancouver, Canada, as a member of Trinity United Methodist Church, as a member of the Bell Choir. I went up there to play in the International Bell Festival. I mean, I've had a lot. I've had an interesting, fun life. I like to say I've lived sort of poor man's rock and roll lifestyle. I play multiple instruments and have played in bands and hung out in bars and met loose women. And I've lived a fun life, and I've never really gave it much thought about why I do it or why I think I should be able to do it. And until, I don't know, it was, when would it have been? Let me think about time. It's going to have been a big gap. Okay, so I'm awake. I've been whatever people want to call it, aware of the New World Order, the manipulations of the bankers, these things since 12, 13, 14 years old, somewhere right in there. Again, Trinity United Methodist Church. I'm a young child. I go to church with my grandmother every weekend. And we start attending this massive, beautiful church in downtown Denver called Trinity. And we meet in this, all these wonderful people over the years of being there. But one person in particular is a man named Ken Riggs. And Ken was one of the first members of the Libertarian Party, the capital L Libertarian Party, one of the first 10. I think it was number 5 or something like that. And he attended this church, and he was my mentor. I was a child from a single mother and grandmother raising me. Not a lot of male influences except for the ones that my mother would have in and out of various relationships and things like that, and jobs and just various male figures that would be around. Nobody stable, anything like that. Didn't know my father. And so it was easy in a situation like that to find a mentor, and thank God he was a mentor and not an abuser, which unfortunately is one of these things that happens in close situations like that, where people have access to young developing people and their developing minds. I was real lucky in that sense, because I know other people that didn't have a true mentor, somebody that they thought they could look up to, ultimately abuse them. So by the time I'm 12, 13 years old, I already know what the Federal Reserve is. I know what Federal Reserve notes are. I know that they're these representations of money, that they're not real money, and that they're controlled and they're manipulated. And I'm already well on my way to being an anarchist at that point. I'm an anarchist already at heart, not knowing the theory and the philosophy and anything like that might give you a foundational argument for something, as opposed to the general argument that I make for anarchy, which is, look at me. That's my sort of general argument for it. I do quite well. I'm very happy in my life. I'm not stressed by the state. I'm a little bit worried for the rest of you guys out there, but I'm quite happy. My life is my wife, my life, my family. It's all wonderful. I have my own business. I don't make any money, but I have my own business. I do my own thing, and it's something that I love, and that's me. I went off to, I lived those years on the street. I finally broke away 1991-ish, right around the time I would have graduated high school, not too long after that. And my mother had already moved away. She had shacked up with a guy that didn't work out, the story. And so she left. They got divorced, and she left, and she moved to this little town where my grandmother was living at the time, in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, in western Kansas. It's called Oakley, as in Annie Oakley. This is just a little one-horse town out there in the middle of nowhere, and I just kind of went there to dry up, man. I was living in Commerce City, Colorado, in and around the Sons of Silence, and messing around with speed. And it was just a nasty, nasty scene. In fact, it's a scene that not long after I left got taken down from the inside. There was actually a History Channel documentary on the Sons of Silence and Commerce City, in the town that I grew up in, and a bunch of the people that I knew. I was not involved in any of that. I was just a kid. But I knew all of these people. I grew up around all these people. I've been to parties with them. I've been to some of their homes, and so it was just another one of these wild things that's happened in my life. So I split off to go dry up, man, just clear my head. Doing too much speed, doing too much acid, partying all the time, instead of just living, trying to find, I thought that was living. That's what I grew up around. That's what I understood. I didn't know much more, but once I got away and cleared my head, I was like, you know what? There were some things I wanted to do. One of the things I wanted to do was go into radio. And it just so happened that Oakley is about 70 miles from Colby, Kansas. And in Colby, Kansas is a little station called T92. And it is a college radio station. It's a community college radio station. It's one of the best colleges in the. Actually, I guess they don't have the program anymore. This is 30 years ago. A wonderful program, wonderful educators, a great history of real radio. Really, truly the best college radio station in the nation, quite literally. Proven by people before me, proven by myself, and proven by people after me, winning awards, going in college competitions up against UCLA, any school in the nation that had a radio program. And so I found this out, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna go be a disc jockey. and I was the first person in my class on the air. Jumped right in, feel real natural about it. When I grew up in the church, I was up there every Sunday ministering to the people, singing, lighting candles, doing something. I was involved. And so I was always up in front of people. I never had problems presenting and talking to people. So it was just a natural thing. And got in with this great crew of people who really loved radio and loved comedy and loved presenting, including my instructor, John Berlew, and just amazing people and amazing times. And I learned that I wanted to do something more than but I wanted to party on Friday nights as the DJ and hang out with both the disco DJ, the voice DJ, the rock DJ, you name it. I've done it all. And I loved it. I loved every single bit of it. And I always wanted to do a talk show, and I'd pitched a talk show to a number of radio stations. I pitched a talk show to KNUS in Denver, and I was a producer there for a while, and I got to do some part-time stuff with some of the other guys that had shows, but it wasn't anything. They were like swap meet shows and car show, talking about cars and home repairs and things, the kind of stuff that you'd find sort of Sunday afternoon on the radio. And it just wasn't my thing. And right about the time all that's happening, we're talking 1998, right in there, 1998. Then the internet is really booming. Podcasting comes along, streaming comes along. All these things are starting to happen right around in that same time. And then fast forward a couple of years, I'm back in Denver. I'm working for KNUS. 9/11 happens. I'm already awake. I'm already aware. I don't really believe what I'm being told on the TV. I don't know exactly what's happened. I think I know what I saw with my own eyes. Not going to pretend that I do. I just know that my government is full of crap, and that the news is their lackey and just totes their line, whatever it is. And so I didn't believe it. And I actually, I grew up listening to Art Bell and George Norrie on the radio as a fan of radio, because they were, the best at it. My God. Just talking about amazing things with just the most amazing people. And, one of those reasons. And then the other one was Monday Night Football. I'm a huge football fan. I know you're a football fan. I love football. I love the competition. I don't necessarily give a damn about the NFL, but I love football. I love the sport. I love that whole the whole thing, everything that comes with it, the good and the bad. It's just an amazing, fun thing. And so I got to call some football games in college, but it was Monday Night Football. It's that CBS Monday Night Football on the radio, and they would just talk, and these vivid pictures would appear in my mind, and they would just have these wonderful conversations about football and sports and things like that. Maybe some people don't care about those things, but as a young person growing up and just feeling that impact and knowing the impact that football has on people, and that, I got to listen to my team, and I got to listen to my broadcaster, and I get, it's a thing, and they tune in, and they're wrapped, and their attention is right there, and it's not taken away. And when it's on radio, it's about that person that can keep that conversation going, keep that line of thought going. And for me, that was really neat, that idea that people it was same with comedians, stand-up comedians. Love George Carlin and grew up with Sam Kinison and all these people. And they just influenced me. They are my anarchist base. The Christian church is my anarchist base. George Carlin is my anarchist base. Living my own existence and meeting I've met Bob Dole and interviewed Bob Dole, and I've interviewed Dave Mustaine, and I've talked with different people all around the world from all sorts of different lives. I worked in the UK for a short period of time and done all these really fun and wonderful things. I thought I can talk about these things, and I can talk about who I am and share that with people, and at the same time plant some seeds, give this little bit of a message just about who I am and about what I've experienced in my life, and why I think that authority, government, rules have been more of a detriment to me being anything. Just pick something, whatever dream I've had. Everybody wants to be a rock star. Everybody wants to be a movie star. Everybody wants to be a fireman. Everybody wants to be a policeman. I could have been a better anything without government. That's what I learned after all this time. Okay, so the last step to get to here is to go all these years. I have this understanding of 9/11 that I think is important in the context of why government does what it does in false flags and manipulated events, and why it would do these things. And so I have all this understanding, and I have all this information, and I attend sort of libertarian meetings and Austrian economist meetings, and I never really find a place to express any greater energy or thought into any of these ideas other than with the same people. And I just wanted this reach. 2011 comes along, and we get Occupy Wall Street. This thing happens, and it's a populist movement. It's not an anarchist movement. It becomes these things. It becomes a controlled black bloc anarchist movement to really discredit all of the wonderful people that really were on the street. The early weeks of Occupy Wall Street, the first few weeks of it, Denver was one of the largest cities that it was happening in, and those first few weeks, we had thousands of different people from all walks of life, all out there on the street, and they were marching against the banks, and they understood. They got that. It wasn't a political thing. It wasn't a left-right thing. It wasn't anarchy. It wasn't any of those things. It was a natural extension of what people were seeing in other places on Wall Street in New York, and people like myself and the people from We Are Change Colorado, and other organizations, wonderful people in and around We Are Change. We had thousands of people out there on the streets marching and holding signs and truly directing their energy at the enemy. But as soon as that happened, all the black bloc anarchists showed up, started busting things up. It devolved instantly and became a controlled opposition manipulation thing. But it was at that point that I got involved with We Are Change Colorado, and through them met all these other wonderful people, and that led to republicbroadcasting.org, looking for a show years ago. And I was off for a while, and then all of a sudden one day I get a message out of nowhere. It's about 5 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago now at this point. I just get a message out of the blue from one of the producers at Republic Broadcasting, and they said, "Man, I remember you from years ago, and you were just great, and you were just talking about these wonderful things, and we're friends on social media. I've been following you all this time." And I had no idea. I didn't even realize it necessarily at the time. And they're like, "Man, come do a show. Come do a show every week, live radio, that thing you do, do that thing you do, and talk about anarchy and talk about whatever you want." And that's what they let me do. And that's the very long version of me. I don't think that there's a shorter version of that story, because I think if you leave any of that out, you miss the core premise of a lot of what I do, suggesting that it's okay to just be you and concentrate on you and live you and do you, all these different little catchphrases, and it'd be okay. I like to. You're in these groups, you know these people. There's a subset of the liberty movement, the anarchist movement, that believe that if your time is not strictly spent screaming at, to, or about the state, that you are wasting time, you are worthless, you are not part of the movement, you're a part of the problem. And I don't believe that that's true.
I completely agree with that. I haven't been a part of the quote unquote liberty movement for very long. You know, I thought I was as a Republican, and, you know, and trying to keep the Democrats out, you know, because the Republicans were all about liberty. And I had this understanding of liberty, you know, we got to go do this thing through the state to make sure we get enough liberty. And I've seen this in the liberty movement so much that it becomes so frustrating to me, to where I want to take a step back, and I'm going to share a post on Facebook about cats.
Okay.
Or I'm going to share a post about me doing jujitsu or going to the gym or something funny, you know, making fun of myself, you know, because you touched on a million different things right there. And one thing that I heard you repeat more than once was manipulation.
Mm.
And I don't think that people understand that we are being manipulated by church, the state, schools, by people who bought into all this garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And it can bog you down to the point where you're like, oh, I'm tired. Let's say something funny on social media instead of getting all into all this bullshit that people keep talking about. Don't get me wrong, I will still do that on social media.
Yeah.
But we have to take a step back and realize, all right, we're still human beings trying to figure this out as we go along, because nobody gets out of here alive, right?
Mm.
So what we're doing is we're trying to make things better for the folks coming behind us. I could sit on social media 24 hours a day if I wanted to and just talk about how bad things are.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do.
And I know they do. I see it. Today, I just got off of a Facebook ban because I posted something that Facebook does not have a sense of humor, apparently.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't understand humor or context.
But for 3 days, I was not able to react, comment, respond to anything on Facebook. I didn't care.
Mm.
For 3 days, I was like, wow,
This is nice.
this is nice. I can do my thing, go to work, you know, come home, do a podcast, all this stuff, whatever. And it didn't bog me down. And I've threatened this more than once, and I've told folks, if it wasn't for the Bad Roman Project, if it wasn't for trying to keep up with friends and family that do not live in Memphis, Tennessee, I would have shut the entire thing down.
Yep. Bye social media.
By social media,
Yep.
because it's garbage.
It's useless.
But the sad thing is our biggest audience is through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and my producers told me this. She goes, "This is our biggest audience." Okay, so we have to play to that. I get it. I understand that. But if it wasn't for the Bad Roman Project, Michael Storm, I'd grab your phone number after we get done here, and me and you would just text. I'd call you on the phone when I need to talk to Michael Storm about something. I would just call you. You know, I wouldn't give a shit about anything else because it's all garbage. I get added to these groups on Facebook. I'm like, why are you adding me to this? I don't give a shit about conservatives and liberals fighting with one another. I mean, that's y'all's garbage. Why am I added to this? And then this stuff pops up on my feed. What are y'all fighting about now? Why are y'all fighting about Kanye West? I don't even know what this guy said, and people are upset about it. It's a thing. Or Donald Trump took some things from the White House and took it to his home in Florida. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Joe Biden's son did some nefarious things. I don't care. I don't care about this. Y'all are fighting about this while your government, the people you elected, are killing people indiscriminately across the world. Y'all are fighting about Kanye West, Joe Biden's son, what's his name? Hunter Biden, Donald Trump, DeSantis in Florida. Y'all are fighting about this stuff. Meanwhile, you got a 5-year-old in Yemen who is dying of cholera because your government is bombing their water facilities,
water supply,
their hospitals, and their weddings. And y'all gloss over this shit. Why are you not paying attention to this? Why are you not paying attention to this stuff? And you're upset about Hunter Biden or Kanye West. You want to talk about privilege? Here's your privilege. You live in America.
Yeah.
You live in America, and this is what you're upset about while this 5-year-old is trying to figure out how they can find clean drinking water. What is wrong with you?
No.
Why is this your thing? And that's why I would love to shut the whole social media thing down, because I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where people do not care about their fellow man. You know, Jesus was the example of Christians, and he went to these people and he helped these people and he told these people how the best way to live your life. And you're fighting about Hunter Biden and Kanye West. What is your problem? What is going on with you that this is what you're fighting about? I don't get it. And I honestly believe that social media has made this such a thing that people are so distracted from all that stuff. They don't want to pay attention to it because it's not in their front yard. It's not in their backyard. It's not in their living room. It's not even on their TV in their living room. You know, corporate media's not talking about this. Michael Storm's talking about it. Craig's talking about it. You're not going to hear about this unless you listen to a podcast. You know, Scott Horton talks about this all the time. But how many people are talking about it in their living room? At their churches? Who's talking about this at their church? Nobody.
Right. All right. Fair enough.
They're not talking about it. I've been to church. I'm a Christian. This is not being talked about. And it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating to me that we have to.
Right.
We don't have to. Like, we didn't have to do this podcast today, but we're going to have this conversation so people can hear it and they can share it with other folks. Why are more people not pissed off about this? Why are more people not paying attention to this? You know, and we were talking about this before we started recording. I had a guy come up to me at work the other day. You better learn how to speak Chinese because they're fixing to take over the United States. You better learn how to speak Mandarin. I'm like, well, hang on a second. The Chinese are not taking money out of my paycheck. The Chinese are not locking me up if I don't pay my taxes. We have an organized mafia in the United States, and we call it the government. We don't call it the mafia. We just call it the government. But it's okay because they have our best interest in mind. Bullshit. I call bullshit. But I told the guy, I said, why are you worried about this?
Did he have an answer?
No.
Okay. See, that's the thing. Yeah. He doesn't even really realize what it is that he's talking about. He really doesn't understand.
I don't know who he's listening to. Who he's listening to get this garbage from. And it's got to be some corporate, right-wing media source that he's getting this from. But he's also told me in another breath, in another conversation, he goes, I'm kind of like you. I just want to watch it burn. Just let it fall down and we'll see what happens after that. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, right.
Well, then stop voting.
Stop legitimizing it.
Yeah, stop legitimizing the whole system. Why are you pretending that you can fix this? And I'm pretty sure, in our past conversations that you kind of went through the whole Ron Paul thing, like a lot of libertarians did to get.
Yeah, I had fun with Ron Paul. I actually campaigned for him. I stood in handcuffs in a orange jumpsuit that says FEMA on the back of it with a hood over my face, handcuffs and shackles, and tried to get elected to. They had the big convention here for him in Denver. This was in 2011. I thought it would be interesting to see the process. So I went to my local precinct early on and was involved with half a dozen, 8 other people who decided for everybody in that district who would be on the ballot, who they'd be voting for. Certainly, at least the Republicans, anyway. And we all chose Ron Paul. It was unanimous. I think I still had. I think I probably have a picture of the board. Took a picture of the chalkboard when we voted. And it was unanimous. Everybody in the room voted for Ron Paul. That was who the Republicans in my district were going to support. And it started out innocently enough, just wanting to see how it worked.
The reason I brought up Ron Paul, and you and I have talked about this in private conversation, and we talked about it on your show as well, the whole Mises Caucus and all this stuff. I like to pick on these folks. I had fun picking on these folks because they feel like they can change the things.
Sure.
With a message, going through the political route and stuff. And I'm like, all right, okay. But y'all are Ron Paul folks, right? Did that guy not prove once and for all that you cannot change the mafia from the inside out?
30 years in Congress didn't change a thing.
Didn't change a thing.
I hate to say it because I have much respect for the man in terms of his thinking. But the reality is, when you break it down, he lived for 30 years off the people and never changed a thing other than the best that you can hope for, which he knew, I'm sure, going in. I don't think he had any delusions that he was actually going to change the system. It was about access. It was about ideas. Ron Paul's responsible for introducing more people to sound economic theory than any economist in history, I imagine. I other than maybe Mises himself and those guys in and around there.
This is not me bagging on Ron Paul at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. Never, no.
Like you said, I have a ton of respect for him. And will always have a ton of respect for him. But the most respect I have for this man is that he proved once and for all this cannot be changed through the system. It's a system. The system does not care about you. The system is only out for the system, to keep the system going, to keep it going. It's a machine. And when you're trying to work through the system to change the system, man, you're going to be part of the system. You become part of the system, and you've lost your voice, in my opinion. The way I look at it, I don't even take them seriously anymore. It's something Lily Forster said when I had her on the show, and she said, I don't even take them seriously anymore.
Sure.
It's hard to take folks, and that's where I think where I'm at right now is like, I could debate these folks nonstop.
Yeah.
About why are you working through the Libertarian Party to try to get your message out? And you want to, I had one tell me we have to legalize more freedom. And I wanted, if this wasn't on social media, I would have grabbed him by his throat and I was like, listen, man, do you not understand what you just said? And what she said, she goes, I don't even take them seriously anymore. They're clowns. It's a clown show. The entire system is a clown show, and you are going to be a clown. You're trying to be a clown with the other clowns. Why don't you move towards anarchy like Michael Storm's podcast is doing?
Well, let me give a little insight to that. You asked a little bit about the show. the show is just me. I'm just a journalist. I'm just journaling my life in podcast form, if you will.
You and I connect in a way that I don't connect with a lot of folks, just in this podcasting arena. It's kind of funny to me, but I don't know how to explain it, but I've always enjoyed our conversations on air, off air, in messaging or whatever. It's always been cool to me to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I was looking forward to the conversation. I was really glad when he invited me to come on. Um, I don't know. I think we're just a couple of normal guys. And I think probably real guys just doing what we really truly believe in, something from our heart, something from our soul. Maybe a little bit different direction or a little bit different audience in ways, but all with that same, I don't know, coming from a place of love, man. That's how I want to approach everybody. That's how I want to talk to everybody until they prove they're not worthy of my love. You know what I mean? And I just think you do great things. I love the whole Bad Roman thing. I love what you're doing there. I think it's great that the podcast itself is taken off, and I think it's wonderful that you're reaching an audience that I have a certain affinity for, because the network that I'm on is a Christian network. And so I'm talking to Christians, and I have to know how to speak to Christians about anarchy. They have a different view than I think the secular person, and I'm not entirely sure. I suppose there's a whole bunch of different reasons why, but there are some barriers that seem to exist there, and they get torn down when somebody hears something like you chatting with the people that you chat with on a regular basis, and I the conversation comes up a lot on my show, just the idea of Christianity and anarchy and how the two of them mesh, and is there a conflict? And I don't see one unless the person is still holding on to the state.
Yeah, you say you have a problem talking to Christians about it. You should be on this side of the microphone talking to Christians about it. And just in real life, I mean, just like at work and just at the grocery store, whatever, if the conversation comes up, if I'm wearing, a Bad Roman t-shirt and the conversation comes up, to get them to understand that there's a no king but Christ, like we only believe in Jesus Christ as our king. And that's why we're anarchists. We're not anarchists because we want to be anarchists, because it's cool to say we're anarchists. It's like a buzzword. It's something I was talking to Lily Forster about when I had her on. It's not a buzzword. We are actual anarchists because we're Christians. And the two words should actually be synonymous. And when you're trying to explain that to your average status Christian, man, their eyes gloss over, and it takes them back because they're not hearing this. And I've told you this when you've had me on your show. We're turning the world upside down with this podcast. Your normal Christian thinking upside down with this podcast, with this project, because they're not used to hearing this stuff. And that is beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, it gets very frustrating because I'm like, I don't want to hear about Romans 13 again. Don't bring Romans 13 to me again, because I'm going to explain to you once and for all what it says, and you're not going to get it. Anyway. But I appreciate the opportunity to go on your show. The last time you had me on the show, I was listening to it last night. We were talking about, my brother's death and the COVID stuff, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, throughout this podcast. And I remember you sharing that on Facebook, and I commented, and somebody else commented. He goes, "You're one of my favorite guests on Toward Anarchy." I was like, "Oh, that's really cool."
Yeah, my audience is really weird because I have the live network audience, and it in and of itself across Republic Broadcasting, they attract a wide array of people. I mean, Mike Rivero's on there. There's a ton of people on there. You recognize names and others you wouldn't, but the the beauty is just the free voices, and that's why it's a pleasure for me to be able to do that, to come on to that network and to have them let me talk about anarchy and let me talk about it from my perspective, because I have, you wouldn't say I have a secular perspective, because I was raised in the Christian tradition. There's no question about that I have a Christian background, and I understand it. I get why people do what they do in general, and so I think I do with Christians as well. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be in that space and talk to that particular group of people, because I'm not preaching to the choir necessarily. I'm talking to open people. They're sitting, they're in the pews, they're out there, but they're not the choir. Yeah.
Well, I've got a buddy, Michael Gaddy, who is somebody who, when I first transitioned into my understanding of anarchism, he was teaching. We were starting these small groups in Arkansas, and I'd have him come and speak at these small groups, and he would teach us about the United States Constitution and stuff. And I would listen to him, and then folks were coming in and listening and stuff. And I asked him one time after one of these get-togethers, I said, man, I've gotten involved with some of these libertarian, circles. This is me coming out of, neoconservatism and all that stuff. And I said, and I was studying the Constitution, to be honest with you, the Constitution actually led me directly to anarchism. So, and I think that's the fact for a lot of folks, that are anarchists. But I asked him one time, I said, hey, how do you feel about anarchism? Because I keep running into these anarchists and these libertarian groups. I don't understand, how they're coming together. I said, but there's something about this, what they're saying sounds a lot like what Patrick Henry talked about, back in the day, with the forefathers and stuff. And he goes, what does anarchism mean to you? What is that definition to you? And I was like, well, it just sounds like no government. This is me very young in my understanding of anarchy. And I was like, well, it just sounds like no government. It doesn't sound chaotic to me like a lot of people portray it. It just sounds like no rulers, no masters, no rulers, like they always, they always say. And that's what I run into with a lot of secular anarchists, like, well, no masters, no rulers. You can't even have a King Jesus. And the longer I've gone through it, I'm like, well, you know what? You can keep your anarchy because I'm keeping my King Jesus.
Right. If I can, yeah, that's a weird thing to me. Anybody saying that an anarchist can't have their thing, especially when it's their thing, when it's something that is for them, that they share, that they partake in voluntarily, and that they share with other people voluntarily. And that's the idea that there's a clash between anarchism and any voluntary relationship, be it with Jesus, God, Muhammad, whoever, whatever, even a government for that matter. If you have, I've always said that the absence of the state doesn't necessarily dictate that there's not going to be a voluntary government. When we speak of the state today, I'm certainly speaking of a state that there's no voluntary participation in. There's the illusion of participation, and there is the inside track. If you get on the inside and you get, you the right people, you get enough money, maybe you get elected to one of them, or one of them funds your out of boondoggle, whatever your boondoggle is, and with taxpayer money, of course. Other than that, we're all just still out here already on our own, and we're already doing our thing, and we're doing it every single day, and we're doing it with each other. We're cooperating, we get along, we build, we destroy, we do all of these things without any thought or consideration for authorities' input. I tell people all the time that what we have, what you see before us, this society that we built, everything that we have, we've built in spite of government leeching off of us all this time and misdirecting our energies and our time and our money.
Hey folks, Craig here, and I'd like to let y'all know we are always looking for writers to contribute to our blog. I don't care if you have any experience or not. 2 or 3 of our contributors had no prior experience writing, and it turns out they have a real knack for it. Our project coordinator helps them put the articles together, and she publishes them on our website and Facebook page, and you will also have the option to come on the show and go more in depth about your article. So if you like what we're doing at The Bad Roman and would like to try your hand at writing, then send us an email at thebadromanpodcast@gmail.com. We're having a blast with this project, and we would love for you to join us in helping promote it. Now back to the show. Do you remember people lining up, forcing their ideas on people about smoking like you did with the COVID vaccine at the end?
At the end of smoking's popularity, it's no longer popular. It's no longer cool to smoke. It's now, well, vapes, which isn't any better, all in all. But the stigma of smoking finally did definitely catch up with itself, and then it was pretty militant. The truth movement, not the truthers, not the truth seekers like myself, but the truth with truth.org. That's that anti-smoking thing that's funded by your government that also funds the people who plant and sell the cigarettes. So
did you see that garbage from the CDC director about the Tuskegee experiment? Did you see what she said?
No, what did she say? This should be good.
Basically, and I am paraphrasing this because I can't remember it verbatim, but basically we're remembering the folks. Man, I don't want to mess this up. I'm going to say folks. The folks who paid the ultimate, or they sacrificed themselves. Man, I'm messing this up, and I wish I could pull it up.
Well, I take it's in the news because of Nelson Robinson, which was the last surviving Tuskegee Airman.
I don't remember what brought it up, and somebody's like, wait a second, so this is the most racist experiment ever, and this is a black man saying this. Any reasonable person should be able to step back and say, well, maybe their call on the COVID vaccine was skewed. And I'm paraphrasing again, because if you're going to say that this was an experiment and they paid the ultimate sacrifice, no bullshit. They didn't know this was being done to them. And it reminds me of the COVID vaccine. But people flock to this. They flock to the vaccine because the powers that be said this is the thing that we should be doing because we want to save our grandma. We don't want to get sick anymore. And anarchists like you and myself, and when this was first coming out, we were like, hang on a second. Back it up a second. Let's talk about this first. Let's talk about this for a second. They didn't want to talk about it. You have to do this. Otherwise, you're going to die. When is the last time the government said anything that was for your benefit? Ever?
I don't think they ever have, necessarily. No.
And so why can't we not be, as students of history, you can't pick up a book and be like, oh, well, maybe this is nefarious. But they didn't. It was so strange to me to watch all that go down.
Well, you had that outside perspective, and whether you were an epidemiologist or not, whether you understood the details of vaccines or not, you already understand that as soon as government is behind it, that there's something wrong, that there's a motive somewhere. It's either political or money motives, and that should be the first red flag. You say it's funny because as COVID was happening, one, I caught it, and this is all on record. You could go back to listen the last 2 years of my show, and as COVID came on, I talk about it, and I talk about it in terms of exactly what's going to happen and how this was going to play out. And it's played out exactly as I predicted, exactly as I said. And it's not a prediction, it's an understanding of history, like you said, being just a little bit of a student of history that I am, and in a particular area, and that's in vaccines. And I've spent years. I won't say I've spent years studying vaccines, because that would be incorrect. I've spent years studying the idea of vaccination, and what I've seen over all of those years is that it's very questionable at best, particularly the way we do it today. And so that right there, I already have a fundamental problem with the idea that you know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to release a vaccine. Well, they jumped right on that right away. So we're going to have a vaccine. And usually in our understanding of virology, or really of anything, our understanding of anything is on it's a bell curve. And if people don't know what a bell curve is, it's a curve of understanding. It's a curve of information that peaks. It's shaped like a bell. You have no understanding on one side of it. You have peak understanding in terms of how you deal with it at the top of it, and that grows as you come down the bottom side of the bell curve. And so it's the same for vaccinations. And if you looked at the bell curve of knowledge and understanding of a vaccine, it starts at the bottom, where we don't know a disease or a virus or whatever it is that they claim causes this thing. We don't know that it exists. And then all of a sudden people start dying, and we start counting numbers, and we start figuring out why they're dying. And we're going up the bell curve. And then you reach the top of the bell curve, and the top of the bell curve is your maximum understanding in certain terms, enough that your deaths begin to go back down the other side. So you're on the other side, and less people are dying. You have more medical understanding. You have all these other approaches and methods, and you close things off. You ask people to wear masks, whatever it is. Every little measure helps more and more of get down that backside of the curve. And here's where vaccines come in to this picture. So you've gone through all of this. It didn't exist. It exists. All these people died. Now people aren't really dying. We've learned to live with it. It's run its course. And then somebody introduces a vaccine. And then in the following months, weeks, years, you see weird, strange occurrences of disease and death, like people claim are happening now post-COVID. And there's a history of this. If you're looking at something like COVID and you're saying, all right, well, this is what government is doing, you know that business is going to jump right in bed with it. They're going to come up with a vaccine, and they're going to sell it to people, and they're not going to know that it works. This is before I even know what an mRNA vaccine is, and how it's supposed to reset your RNA, and all of these things that they pretend like they never said, but they said it immediately as they started releasing these things. It'd be like uploading new code to your computer. And that red flags for me right away, because wait a minute, now you're talking about a technology that hasn't worked. This hasn't worked before in any way that you've tested it, and now all of a sudden you're going to put it in a new form, in a new delivery system, and you're going to give it to people all over unknowingly, and you're going to do it, I guarantee you, in 2 shots or more, because that covers up the numbers. That helps hide the numbers of failures of the shot. And then what's going to happen is you're going to see health problems increase in the years following the introduction of the vaccine. And that's exactly what we're going through now. And you can go back through 2 years of this, of me tell you, this is exactly how this thing is going to play out. And it's because it's historical, and it's because the entire vaccine industry is built on lies. Is it built on an entire falsehood? Is something that you said earlier that is really, it really gets to me that they keep using this because they're still using it now. I heard it in a commercial for vaccines the other day, for the COVID vaccine the other day. And basically the default premise of disease is that everyone gets it and everyone dies. But we already know that's not true because everyone would already be dead. The whole planet, there would be no people. There would be no planet. There'd be no computers. There'd be no Craig. There'd be no Mike. None of this shit would ever happen. None of it. We'd all been dead a long time ago. So that default assumption is wrong, but they still use it. This is subtle. So some people get COVID and some people get COVID badly or something along those lines. So the default is everybody gets it. And the case is yours is probably going to be worse than anybody else's. So you better rush out and you better jump on this new technology that for the previous decade of attempts to get it to work, it has never worked. And we're going to try a new delivery system. And the delivery system is also known to cause neurological problems already. Just exactly what is it that you need to tell somebody in advance, 2 years before the crap hits the market or thereabouts, certainly months and months before the stuff hits the market, that this is exactly what they're going to do before they stop and go, hey, wait a minute, that guy on that show, on that little network over there that doesn't know anything about anything told this is exactly what's going to happen with this chemical concoction, and they're going to push it on the people and people are going to pay for it.
Well, you're just a conspiracy theorist and
I am.
You're just not believing in the science. And you're not paying attention to what the experts are saying. You're more concerned about Michael Storm than you are the rest of it. Well, which may be true. And that's valid. I'm more concerned about Craig, than I should be.
I hope so.
About other people in to a fault. But I'm going to tell you something. When the government says something, I say no. We were going through this stuff at work, when they were going to, you had to get a vaccine or they were going to start docking your pay through your insurance.
Yeah. Oh, right. You told me about that. Yeah.
And we had these meetings. And I was like, you are telling us that we have to put a foreign substance into our body or else you're going to start taking money out of my paycheck. That's unethical. I don't give a shit who's telling you this is right or wrong. It doesn't matter. You don't have that right to dock my pay if I don't put a shot in my arm. And I'm not anti-vaccine. That's the whole thing. Is like people were like, "You're an anti-vaxxer." I was like, "No, I've had them all. I've had all the vaccines." But this one, when they start telling me I have to, I'm gonna buck immediately. Especially when you start messing with my money. When you start messing with my money and telling me that I have to do this, no, something's wrong here. And the fact that people can't take a step back and look at this like, oh, yeah, something's messed up here. People want to talk about, the whole abortion issue with my body, my choice. And a lot of folks started saying, well, my body, my choice. I don't want to put this vaccine.
Right.
I hated that when people were using that. I used it myself. You have to use it. I hated the whole argument. But don't tell me that I've got to put something in my body that I'm not comfortable with or I'm going to lose pay over it. No, I'll find another job. There's a lot of people out there not working because they don't want to. You know what this did with people? They stayed at home and got paid to do it, and now people aren't working. We can't even find people to work these days. I can find a job. The printing industry in the Memphis area is exploding. Don't tell me I can't find another job. I ended up getting a religious exemption.
Sure.
I have a buddy who has a home church, and he wrote me an exemption, turned it in. They accepted it. I didn't get docked. But there were people coming out and saying, am I going to get my money back? Because they come out and announced it, and I'm probably going to get in trouble if anybody that listens to this show that I work with, they come out and said, we're not going to do this anymore. But can we get our money back? Like at first it was $200 a month, and then they dropped it because people started dropping their insurance. Like, well, I'm not going to have my insurance here anymore. And once that started happening, but they dropped it like, well, it's only $27 a paycheck now. Okay, that's how you change things. You start saying no. I'm not doing this. Because you said something a while ago, money. When the money starts talking, people start walking away, then you start losing money. Say no. It's okay to say no. And we should be saying no about a lot of things. And we've talked about 1,000 different things during this conversation. This reminds me of our phone conversations. This reminds me of our off-air time, talking to me and you talking, and I love this so much. And I don't want to let you go before we talk about Toward Anarchy. I don't want to get off on all this other stuff because we could talk for another 2 or 3 hours, but keep going.
So we were in the middle of saying something, and I was going to leave a little tidbit for the libertarians, and then we got sidetracked, and I started talking about cigars and stuff. So this is for the libertarians, the big L libertarians. Now, your party was started by anarchists. David Nolan was an anarchist, and many of the people that were involved with the party early on considered themselves anarchists. And so the Libertarian Party has forgotten its roots, and that's what Toward Anarchy is. Toward Anarchy is literally a phrase coined by David Nolan when they were talking about the early, I'm thinking this is 68 or something like that. They're talking about trying to form their own party and what they would do, slogans and logos and just all of the minutia that goes along with the party, and including working on the platform and things like that. And so this is the early days of the Libertarian Party. And David himself, I believe it was David, who suggested that the logo or the slogan for the Libertarian Party be Toward Anarchy. And this is in reference to the well, nowadays it's called the world's smallest political quiz. It's the quiz that you give to see if you're a libertarian or not. And it's 3 questions. It's 3 questions, and it plots out a limited dimensional a graph of where you are in terms of authoritarianism in regard to money, laws, just a few simple things. It's the world's shortest political quiz, and it's supposed to point to, people can't see it now. If they do, I'm sure if they ever do see the video, I'm sure we'll get some conversation about the flags behind me, because I have the anarchist flag, but then it appears that there's an American flag behind me. That is not an American flag. That is an Assassin's Creed flag. It's a video game flag. It has nothing to do with state worship. It has everything to do with me loving the game Assassin's Creed. So the anarchist it points to the upper right quadrant of the of what was the world's smallest political quiz, and that area is the maximum point of liberty, of economic and political liberty. So that's the maximum point of freedom. And so it's a 0 point. So you never truly reach it, but you can always go toward anarchy. You can always work in that direction, dismantling the idea of authoritarian systems and government itself. And that's where the phrase Toward Anarchy comes from for the show. And we're on every week across Republic Broadcasting Network all around the world. It's fantastic. I get thousands of people listening, just people all over the website and comments on the social media. And I have wonderful guests. I bring people in like yourself, talk about something like Christian anarchy, or I've had just wonderful people on, economists, free thinkers, just random people that I read an article about on some small paper on some website in some place, and they're just talking about wonderful things and building community and sharing good ideas and good information. And that's what I try to do with the show.
I remember we were friends on Facebook, and I don't know how we became friends on Facebook.
No
Just
idea.
kind of the whole liberty
Mhm.
involvement, I guess, or something. And I remember you posting something. You were looking for guest ideas on Facebook, and I just shared our website. I was like, well, I don't know if this is I'll just share the website. Maybe this. And you messaged me. He's like, yeah, let's get you on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Christian anarchy. And I remember the first time I was on your show, I wasn't familiar with the whole live.
Oh yeah, commercials and stuff. Sure.
Yeah. So just trying to link up, and I listened to that first episode. And I was like, man, that sounds so cringy. And I remember messaging, apologize, like, man, that sounded awful. And I apologize. You're like, I don't care. It was a good conversation. Right. The next conversation we had, I was a little more prepared, for it, and it sounded a lot better. But I remember listening to your show to prepare for it. I was traveling, and I was like, man, this is fantastic. This sounds like listening to a radio, show. Like you're just driving along, you're listening to a radio broadcast, and this is what it sounded like to me. This is fantastic. You can go back to all of your other all your other shows and listen to it, whenever you feel free or have free time. But listening to it live, I was like, this is cool. How you handle that. Like you can tell listening to Michael Storm that he's got a voice for radio
and a face for it too.
he's got the perfect face for radio. We don't show it. It's perfect. But I want to touch back on something real quick before I let you go. You were mentioning the Libertarian Party. At some point, when do libertarians wake up and say, all right, this isn't working? If this was going to work, it would have already worked. Mm-hmm. Now let's try something different. And that's what I try to get across to folks with the Bad Roman Project. Okay, as Christians, what we're doing is not working. Maybe we go back to the basics, the basic teachings of Jesus Christ, start there and move towards, something better. Instead of going, because to me, when you're working through a Libertarian Party or a caucus or Republican, Democrats, whatever, to me, you're going in reverse. You're stuck in the mud.
I think so too.
You've lost the idea of moving towards something, and you're just trying to play.
Giving up. You're settling.
You've settled. You gave up.
Yeah.
Why have you given up? If you believe in liberty so much, you want liberty for yourself, for your kids, your wife, your family, your friends. Why are you settling for this? Why? Let's go towards something. And that's why I like the name of your show, Toward Anarchy. Let's move towards anarchy.
That's why it resonated with me. That's why I chose the name after all those years. I remember when I first saw it, it was probably 2001. It was probably not long after September 11th. It was late 2001, early 2002. And I just was reading through Ken Riggs. I mentioned him earlier. I was reading through his some of his papers that he collected over the years in that early party thing, and that newsletter was there, and the idea struck me immediately. Toward it, let's work towards this. We're not all on the same page, but let's work toward liberty, man. Let's work toward that total freedom. And so, with all these political scales and all these things, I boil it down to a real simple straight line. There's tyranny, and there's anarchy, and everything in between is just some minor form of tyranny. That's it. That's all that's in there. It's a straight line. It's real easy to figure out. Hey, I wanted to ask you something though, because I know that we hit on the COVID thing, just real quick. That was it was a real rough time, and it's still impacting a lot of people all around the globe. And you're somebody that had a personal impact from it. You mentioned your brother earlier and things, and I know that's been really hard on you. And I just want to commend you for sticking with it and realizing that it has been hard on you, and that you just take this shit one day at a time, man. I see a lot of people fall apart when something so big, something so so painful like that hits them. And you're a strong man, and you're strong in your beliefs and your ideas. And I'm glad that it's carried you through it, because I think you got value, not just to yourself and to me, but I think you have a value out there like we all do. And I hope you realize that. And I hope that the struggle never overtakes you, because I get that. I think that it did with your brother. the struggle won, and I think it was a lot of manipulations and things that do that. And I'm glad that you already see that those things exist, because it's
I
I
would be
can't
lying.
imagine.
I would be lying to you if I said it doesn't still affect me.
Oh, I know it does. I can hear it.
Especially,
I hear it in your voice, and I can hear it in your typed voice at times when you mention it. I know it's there.
we're recording this, after Thanksgiving, leading up to Christmas and stuff, and this is
Mhm.
the hardest time of the year for me and my family.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the COVID stuff with folks, and they talk about somebody dying from COVID or the flu or whatever, they dismiss or gloss over the fact that people died due to the manipulation that sent them into isolation. And I'm not going to say that my brother's not at fault for his actions. He, I own that. I own that. He drank himself to death. But here's the thing: I do, and my mom agrees with me, do know for a fact. I can't say for a fact, but I do strongly believe if it had not been for the lockdowns, the forced isolation, that TJ would still be walking around today, maybe drinking too much
He may be struggling
and
still.
struggling still, but he would still have a chance.
Yeah.
And this sent him into a stupor where, like, he bought into this hook, line, and sinker. And had he survived to the point of vaccinations, he probably would have got a vaccine, which is whatever. But the whole point that people will just do not pay attention to, and this is why I talk about it so much, and maybe people get sick of hearing it. I don't know.
No.
And I don't even care if people get sick of hearing it, because I'm gonna talk about it till the day I die.
Dude, it's a hidden cost thing,
I'm
man.
gonna talk about it till the day I die,
Yeah.
because I know for what happened to my brother when this happened. And it wasn't just him. Suicide rates spiked and nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it. Yeah.
Alcohol sales went up to 300% during this, and nobody talks about it.
I remember them making a special provision, even in the town that I live in, that they could sell out on the street corner, that people could come up and buy it on the street corner outside the liquor store.
It's almost like they were trying to corner people, and I don't want to sound like Alex Jones here, but like they were just literally trying to kill people to
Yeah.
off them to get, I don't know, man. I don't know if that sounds crazy or not, but I saw it in real time what happened to my brother.
Yeah.
And it happened so fast. We started this project in March of 2020, right in the heat of the COVID stuff, right? And in August of 2020, my mom found my brother dead.
That was the worst period. Yeah.
8 months. 8 months. 8 months. Okay, so it never dawned on me that this could happen to my family or my brother. It didn't register with me. My mom was worried about him. She told me, check on your brother. And I checked on him. He seemed fine. But he got mad at me because I was like, you got to get out of that apartment, man. Go back to work. Get some normalcy back in your life, because he was offered his job back and he was scared to death of this virus because of what people were telling him. And then he sat there and drank and drank and drank and died. Yeah, it's I do pretty good most of the year. Then around the holidays, I get a little, sideways with folks, and I apologize if I get sideways with folks.
No. I think it's important because the reality is that there are a lot of things that have come and gone through this whole COVID thing, and some of the things that are gone are people, and these are real people, and they left real people behind them with questions and trying to understand exactly what happened and why something like this would happen. And there's a hidden toll of COVID that is not being talked. It's gotten a mention here and there. You get some every once in a while. You hear somebody pay a little lip service to the number of suicides and how much drinking went up in during that period, and it hasn't necessarily come back down yet either. There's still a lot of fear and a lot of confusion, and they just keep trying to ramp it. And here's the thing: is that there's the next thing. What's the next shoe to drop? And we're already in a weakened financial, physical, and mental state all across the nation, individuals. And this is what I was talking about, whereas, I feel pretty good with my life, but I worry about other people. I'm just glad there are people like you who can speak to the reality of it and the truth of it, and that you're strong and you hold on and you see what it's worth. Because there's no better voice than your own for someone like your brother who was voiceless, man.
Well, and the more that things are coming out now, you seem like, people would be happy. It's like, yeah, we told you so. We told you, the masks that weren't doing anything. We're seeing that the vaccines weren't doing anything. The lockdowns have caused all this, the cost of things that we're seeing now and all this stuff. And you would think that I would be happy that people are recognizing that, but it pisses me off because I lost my brother.
Yeah, it's bittersweet
due to this situation. He didn't die of COVID. And yes,
right.
he has his own responsibility to bear, with the drinking. But that's where I get a little sideways with folks when they talk about this stuff. I'm like, we've told you. And now my brother's dead. I'm glad people are waking up to it. It's like, oh, yeah, that was all bullshit. Okay. Going into 2023, my brother's still dead. So, and I try not to be that guy, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy that puts that out there. And I don't talk about it much anymore. Unless, Michael Storm asks about it. I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't just go out there and put it out there. It's like, hey, what about this? But when people come to me and want to talk about, what are you seeing that there's that people are still wearing masks in their vehicles? Yeah, whatever. I don't care if they're wearing 17 masks. I don't care.
No, and I didn't care that they wore it then. What I didn't want them to do was suggest that I had to, or that I had, that I should change my life and I should alter me and quit my job or lose my job and shut down my business. And no, these were the real problems. Yeah.
I saw a thing on Facebook the other day. This guy, and I think it was in Canada. And Canada's probably been one of the worst with this whole vaccine stuff. And this guy lost his business, his restaurant, because he fed an unvaccinated person.
What?
I'm like, what the hell is going on with these people?
Yeah.
How can you not look at something like this and be like, this is bullshit?
Yeah.
Why are y'all buying into this anymore?
Yeah. I ask myself a lot of times, how can we be where we are today in our understanding of history and tyranny and slavery and manipulations of people and markets and governments? And I just wonder.
Well, the next thing, you and I should not be surprised how people respond to it.
Yeah.
Because I was absolutely surprised at how people responded to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know maybe that's me being naive or ignorant to how people actually wanted to be free. No, I don't think your average person wants to be free. I think your average person is happy being a slave.
Yeah, what was it? I shared a quote with my audience today. It was a perfect little. It just speaks to this exactly. The greater part of the population is not very intelligent, dreads responsibility, and desires nothing better than to be told what to do, provided the rulers do not interfere with its material comforts and its cherished beliefs. It is perfectly happy to let itself be ruled. Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sad, man. It's sad. It's sad. It's sad because this. I wanted to bring this up, before I let you go. I fully believe that we're all born anarchists, and then somewhere along the way we're manipulated. And you use the word manipulation quite a bit earlier on with telling your own story. And somewhere along the way we're manipulated, and we lose track of where we were actually at when we were born. and now we got to work our way back towards that anarchy.
I love it.
You know, and the word anarchy seems, you know, cringe to people, but when you really get down to the basic facts of anarchy, it's just peace. It's freedom. It's living your life, not harming one another, voluntarily interacting with one another. That sounds awesome to me. Why can't we get back to that? Let's move towards anarchy. And folks, if you've not listened to Michael Storm's show, I encourage you to go listen to Toward Anarchy. I'm enjoying these conversations I'm having with folks from other podcasts because I listen to these podcasts all the time. And that's all I do. I don't listen to corporate media. I listen to podcasts. And so I've got a wide variety of podcasts to listen to. And Toward Anarchy is one of my favorites.
Well, thank you.
If y'all get a chance, go check it out. You can find him on all the platforms. Go listen to Toward Anarchy. You're going to find it's a wide variety of conversation too. That's what I love so much about your show. Like, you know, a lot of what we do with the Bad Roman is we focus on Christian anarchy, but we go and do stuff like this, you know, and I like to do that with this show too. Like, let's get out of, you know, let's not talk about Christian anarchy today. Let's just talk about anarchism, or let's just talk about freedom. Let's just talk about what's going on in the world right now with each other, and people can listen in. So go listen to Toward Anarchy. And Michael, I really appreciate your time and spending an hour and a half with me today. You know, and I hate that we don't get to talk as much as I'd like to, because we have some fun conversations. If y'all could hear our conversations off air,
they're just about as good. Maybe a few more F-bombs.
Yeah, pretty much. But why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find your stuff at?
I'm everywhere. Toward Anarchy. Type it in anything, and 99.9% of the time, it's going to be me that pops up. Social media, search engine, whatever. TowardAnarchy.com, the best place to go. As I say, TowardAnarchy.com to follow along.
All right, buddy. I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bad Roman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts to never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, it really helps people find us. 100% of donations are given to local charities in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about the Bad Roman Project and to find show notes, please visit thebadroman.com.